Or,
Well, I don't know.
you'll be sorry!
Welcome everyone to my end of the year video where I talk about the current state of professional wrestling and what to expect moving forward into 2023. Before I do all of that, I would like to remind everybody to check out my most recent heel or face video with Bret Hart as the main focus. Check that out. And my recent Undertaker videos, part 3 just dropped. So that series is complete, so be sure to check all of those out. And check out Weekday Warriors of Wrestling, the podcast with Eric Clancy. We recently restarted doing those. And the link to the channel will be in the description. So again, go check out our recent episodes. And be sure to send us questions for our viewer mailbag segments. Send us questions. We'll answer them on the air and as part of the podcast episode. So it's a way for you all to participate. And as always, be sure to like, subscribe, and do all of that other fun stuff on this channel so you can stay up to date on the current events going on with me and this channel. But with all that said, let's go into the current events of professional wrestling, which I haven't talked about current events all that much lately because I've been focused so much on, aside from all the personal life stuff, I've been focused on this channel on doing past stuff like heel or face videos and The Undertaker's career and things like that. So I haven't had a whole lot of time to talk about the current events in AEW, WWE, or any other wrestling company. So I'm happy to do that here because a lot of stuff has broken over the last couple of days and there's a lot of stuff that's really worth talking about. So first let's do a topic that Eric and I spoke about on our most recent episode of Weekday Warriors of Wrestling, so again, be sure to check out that episode to get Eric's thoughts on the matter, but the potential return of Vince McMahon to the WWE after the last few months. We've seen the WWE under Triple H's creative direction, and while I have my issues with stuff that's been going on Raw or SmackDown, the overall creative direction overall has been better. And noticeably better, I should say. And it's made the WWE a little bit more palatable to watch. I still have issues with the programming. You know, shows are too long, matches are too long. The pay-per-views are shorter, which is great. Makes them a lot more digestible. But generally, like the program, there's still too much content, and they're struggling to fill all of that content. And that creates some problems, like matches being too long and what have you. But overall, the show's been much better. And now you have to wonder, if Vince does come back, how is that going to affect the creative direction? Is he going to split the titles again? Is he going to... Because that's one of the best things they've done, is where Roman's the #1 champion. The Usos are just the tag champions without the Raw or SmackDown qualifiers. And that makes the title situation, to me, a lot better. And I wouldn't be upset if they unified all of their belts and was just done with that. But... you know, if Vince does come back, are they going to slip back into some bad habits? Although I will say, creatively, not everything Triple H has done has been great. Like, I can't stand The Miz. I keep calling him Sam Shaw because I remember him from Impact. But Dexter Lumis, that whole storyline, I can't stand it. Gargano is terrible. Like, I don't know what happened to him, but... that whole storyline has just been complete and utter ass, and I can't stand watching it. I cannot get behind the Judgment Day. I've given that stable a chance. I don't like them. I don't like the gimmick. To me, it's dime store Ministry of Darkness. I don't like it. It's boring, and I tend to tune out whenever they're on screen. But not saying that the people involved in it aren't talented, you know, Rhea Ripley, Finn Balor, what have you, but it's the group itself is just boring to me. But generally, the creative direction has been much better, especially when you look at the Sami Zayn storyline with the Bloodline. I think the Bloodline is the best thing going right now in WWE by far. They've done a better job of making the status of United States Champion and Intercontinental Champion matter more. So Gunther holding the IC title feels a lot more important. And you know, the current situation with the U.S. title feels like a major angle with Seth Rollins and Bobby Lashley being fired at the end of Raw. Although it was a little rushed, it's still like a nice little cliffhanger to end on and things like that. So generally, WWE has been much better, and I fear for what's going to happen if Vince comes back. Because let's be honest here, Vince is inching towards 80 years old. What more could he possibly do in the day-to-day operations of WWE, some people say he never left. He's just been operating behind the scenes. I don't know how true that is. Sorry, I'm petting my dog here. Who knows? Like, it's just, it's a crazy situation. I'm kind of okay with things the way they are. I'd rather they accentuate the positives from 2022 and keep moving forward in that direction rather than just go right back to what they were doing before and all of it be under the guise of a crazy old man who fell out of touch with the audience years and years ago. But again, that's something we'll have to wait and see what happens. One thing that did happen is the firing of Mandy Rose, which caught everybody off guard because, and granted, I have watched very, 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 very little NXT the last few years, or pretty much since AEW came around, because I've said it then and I'll say it again. When they went to Wednesday nights, went to 2 hours, became a show on USA, it basically killed any and all intrigue that NXT had as a brand, and it ruined it. It ruined everything good that they had going on that show. And, it's been hard for me to get back into NXT. I've tried watching a few of the shows. I watched the WrestleMania weekend shows, and I did not see this latest one that they did. I don't even remember the name of it. The one with those wacky King of the Mountain gimmick match things or whatever they were doing. But didn't see it. I've watched very little NXT, but that said, the little NXT I have watched, Mandy Rose has been one of the obvious stars that they have left on that brand, and it's baffling to me that they would have let her go. And apparently, as the story goes, the content on a website that she's been running has been very risque. I'm old enough to remember when Jerry Lawler was posting naked pictures of his wife on a website, and nobody bat an eyelash, his wife being Stacey Carter, the cat. And this is like before social media, this is before OnlyFans, this is before a lot of stuff. And Jerry Lawler was just posting these pictures on a website. It's him and his wife, well, not him, but his wife was just naked. And it was just like, yeah, whatever. Nobody cared. Like, nobody freaking cared. But apparently Mandy was warned about this. Again, it's a sign of how things change. From what I've heard, she was warned about this several times, and they finally were like, "No, we got to pull the plug on it," and they took the title off of her and let her go randomly. As far as like they just did it on a random episode of NXT without much build, but I don't know. It seems weird to me. It seems very weird. Now, many people have accused WWE of doing this because they're not seeing any of the money that she's making off of a third-party site, which goes back to the whole question. It's like, look, are they employees or are they contractors? Because if they're contractors, then they should be able to have little side hustles on the side. And as far as the content being risque, again, I haven't seen it. Feel free to send it to me. I'm not going to complain. I think Mandy Rose is gorgeous, but I don't know exactly how far she went. Was she blowing dudes on the website? Like, again, I don't know how far she's going with this, but I mean, if it were like porn level stuff, I guess I could understand like WWE not wanting to be associated with that image. But if it's just her in scantily clad outfits for a website, it's like, it's not any different from what they're posting on like Instagram or anything like that. So it's like something that they need to define and figure out moving forward. But so again, there's a lot about it that I don't know. I just thought her firing was very, very out of left field and baffling, considering like she was one of the few things that NXT had going after its fall from grace a few years ago. So it's like, well, now I have even less reasons to watch NXT. But oh well, I wish Mandy the best. There's talks about Impact being interested in her, which Impact has basically become the island of misfit toys. So if you can't get a job in WWE and you can't get a job in AEW, God damn it, Impact will pick you up in a heartbeat. Jonathan Gresham's there now, so it's nice to know his PWI ranking got him a job. But anyways, I wish Mandy the best. I mean, she might just keep it the website because I'm sure there's no shortage of internet simps that'll throw money at you to post like scantily clad photos. So, but yeah, it's a shame because I thought she was, again, the few times that I watched NXT, I thought she was one of the best things that they had by far. She was one of the few things that left a positive impression on me on the few occasions I watched NXT. And it's a shame that they don't have that anymore. So What are you going to do? So, enough of Mandy Rose. Let's talk about Ring of Honor. It was announced after the latest Ring of Honor pay-per-view, Final Battle 2022, which I did not watch the night of. I have since gone back and watched. I thought the show overall was solid. The double dog chain match between FTR and the Briscoes was amazing. Great stuff, as usual, from those two teams. They've basically carried these Ring of Honor pay-per-views all year long. I mean, they arguably had, like, 3 of the top 5 best pay-per-view matches of the year. If you want to get, like, start ranking matches, which I'll get into my end of the year award stuff later. But they announced following the pay-per-view that a weekly Ring of Honor show would be happening, but it's going to be on Honor Club for $10 a month. Yikes. I am not paying $10 to watch Ring of Honor. I'm telling you that right now. Now, there was a time where you probably could have gotten away with this, but when WWE is on Peacock for a few bucks a month, and I also get The Office and Cheers and Everybody Loves Raymond to go along with it, it's kind of like the value is just not there for me to want to spend $10 a month on to watch Ring of Honor. Now, the positive out of this, if it gets Ring of Honor off of AEW programming, that is awesome. I'm completely okay with that. Just get it the fuck off of Dynamite, because good God almighty, Ring of Honor has ruined AEW creatively because it's made the show too bloated, poorly defined. Like, I don't know who's a Ring of Honor guy, who an AEW guy is. They got too many belts floating around. Ring of Honor has creatively destroyed All Elite Wrestling. It's just made it a confusing, over-bloated mess. And I can't believe it's taken them this long to kind of like figure out what to do with Ring of Honor. And and I'm thinking in my mind, it's like, look, you've got 2 internet shows. Was it that hard to turn one of the YouTube shows into a weekly Ring of Honor show? Would it have been that hard? I mean, my God. But they didn't do that. They instead decided to put it behind a paywall, and I can't imagine, like, there being that much of an audience to want to pay $10 a month to see a weekly Ring of Honor show. I just can't. I can't imagine. Yet, AEW Heels is still a thing. So, I saw a commercial for that on one of the internet shows a while back, and my jaw dropped because I had no idea that was still going. But I would be very, very surprised if this was a success moving forward. But, again, I think the better move would have just been to turn one of the 2 AEW Darks into a weekly Ring of Honor show. You could tape it after Dynamite. It would have been easy. It would have been so easy. Or they could give them the Orlando show, when they do the Orlando Dark tapings. Just do that. And if they wanted Ring of Honor to be a separate entity. But it looks like Ring of Honor is going to be a separate entity moving forward. I better not see any more Ring of Honor titles or belts floating around on AEW programming ever again, because good God almighty, it just threw everything out of whack creatively. And it's like, if the less Ring of Honor belts that are on AEW TV, the better, and they can get back to making being a champion mean something a little, because that's been one of AEW's biggest problems this year, where it's like, dude, if you don't either have a belt or you're not fighting for a belt, you're just useless, right? Because they got so many. And that's not to say anything for like the New Japan belts and the AAA belts that get defended on their shows from time to time. So too many titles, too many belts. Roster is ill-defined. They need to get Ring of Honor off of there and just kind of like settle down and get things back on track creatively, because AEW, I mean, to be perfectly honest, and it started with Cody's departure, but AEW this year has kind of come off the rails. And the bloom kind of came off the rose for a lot of people. There was the CM Punk embarrassment at All Out and that whole debacle. Like there was the aforementioned Cody thing, where a guy who was perceived as being an owner of the company left the company, and it's not a good look. And then Cody went on to, even though he got hurt, he went on to have the best match at this year's WrestleMania, and one of the gutsiest performances I've ever seen at Hell in a Cell with Seth Rollins. So it's like, how did AEW even allow that to happen? It's just crazy. And then, like I said, there was the whole CM Punk situation with the Elite, and then you throw Ring of Honor on top of that. That just made the entire show feel like a convoluted mess. The entire show took a nosedive creatively. And, part of that's a bloated roster. Part of that is having too many belts. Part of that is unfortunate scenarios like Cody's leaving and Punk having a hissy fit at the press conference. And again, I don't know, like, you look at the CM Punk All Out situation, I don't know. Part of me wonders with the Elite, like, if they have, like, a Mean Girls-y type of personality behind the scenes where... Because there is, certain patterns start to emerge. Like, why would Cody leave? Why would he suddenly not be a member of the Elite? Why would FTR be left out of the video game? And things like that. And you start wondering, is the Elite like being little mean girls behind the scenes and just being petty little assholes? And did they finally cross sticks with the absolute wrong guy, who is a bipolar whack job that if you look at him the wrong way, he'll flip his shit? So I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. I'm just spitballing and speculating, but. It feels like AEW kind of had an off year, shall we say. So hopefully they're able to kind of right the ship. I think MJF is a great one to have as champion. I think the match he had with Ricky Starks on this week's Dynamite was terrific. Ricky Starks is a guy I believe in heavily. I've really gotten attached to him. So hopefully they can move in a positive direction moving forward because, man, they had a rough year. But so that's my take on the whole Ring of Honor situation. Now, what else is there to talk about? Well, there is Wrestle Kingdom, which is happening, as per usual, happening January 4th in the Tokyo Dome. And I'm going to pull up the card right here. It's not going to be the two-night event that it's been the last few years, but it is going to be their big Tokyo Dome show. I'm going to pull up the card and talk about it because I have not watched much New Japan this year. As someone who was kind of like a regular watcher for the last few years, ever since COVID, I kind of fell out of the habit of watching New Japan. But I'm going to take a look at the card that they have going here, because there is a lot of interesting stuff on it. So we've got, on the pre-show, we've got, I have no idea who those guys are, Bolton Oleg and Ryohei Oiwa? Yeah, I don't know who they are. You've got the New Japan Rambo, which is their typical pre-show match. Then we've got a six-man tag, the Antonio Inoki Memorial match. Yuji Nagata, Satoshi Kojima, Togi Makabe taking on Tatsumi Fujinami. Jeez, there's a name out of the past. Minoru Suzuki, my boy, and Tiger Mask. That's pretty cool. For the IWGP Junior Heavyweight titles, we've got Catch 22, TJP and Francisco Akira taking on Chaos members Yo and Leo Rush. Leo Rush still gets work. Good for him. We've got the IWGP Women's Championship. Kairi taking on Tam Nakano. And a point of intrigue here, speaking of the women, who are not a common presence in New Japan, just recently started making headways in the promotion. There's talks that Sasha Banks is going to appear. And I'm going to keep calling her Sasha Banks until we get like an official name on TV that I can refer to her as, because in my mind she's just Sasha Banks. It's like the Sam Shaw thing. It's like that's how I knew her first, so that's the name I go to. Excuse me, but there's talks that she's going to appear at Wrestle Kingdom, which is amazing, and it kind of reminds me of when Jericho showed up for a couple of those Wrestle Kingdoms, had the big match with Omega. It just feels like a big attraction that's worth checking out. So we'll see what she does at the Tokyo Dome and what she does moving forward. And I think Japanese women's wrestling being what it is, there's a lot of opportunities for her to make her name known in the land of the rising sun. So I think there's some cool potential there, although I have more to say about Sasha later in this video. So once I get past the Wrestle Kingdom preview, we'll cover that. But we have, for the IWGP Tag Team Championship, FTR defending against Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi. We've got the New Japan World Television Championship Tournament Finals, because that's what New Japan needed, more belts. Zack Sabre Jr. Going up against Ren Narita. For the Never Openweight title, we've got Carl Anderson, currently with WWE, so WWE and AEW both have a presence on the show. Taking on Tama Tonga. We've got another six-man tag team match. This one being billed as Kenji Muto's last match in New Japan, the last of the great Muta. Kenji Muto, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Shota Umino taking on LIJ members Tetsuya Naito, Sonata, and Bushi. That'll be an emotional match because I'm a big fan of Great Muta, so it'll be cool to get to say goodbye to him, very much like it was for Liger a few years back. Then we've got Taiji Ishimori taking on El Desperado, and Hiromu Takahashi and Master Wato in a four-way for the Junior Heavyweight Championship. We've got another major match with AEW crossover appeal. Will Ospreay defending the U.S. Championship against Kenny Omega. That should be an outstanding match. Kenny Omega makes his return to the Tokyo Dome, so I'm definitely interested in checking that out. And unfortunately, we have kind of a dull main event. It's Jay White defending the IWGP Heavyweight title against Kazuchika Okada. Nothing against both guys. They've had great matches in the past. It's just that I feel like I've seen this match 24 times, and I'm a little surprised that this is the main event because I'm kind of tired of seeing it. I'm sure they'll go out there and have their typical amazing match, but I feel like I've seen it, and that's kind of the problem. But overall, I think the card is very interesting, very good, a lot of intrigue, so I will definitely be checking that show out, and you should as well. Now let's get into Sasha Banks. 2023 is going to be really interesting very, very early because Sasha, as it turns out, is no longer associated with WWE, and she is allowed to start working based on their negotiations. She's allowed to start taking bookings in January of 2023, so hence the talk of her appearing at Wrestle Kingdom in the Tokyo Dome. Now, this has also started speculation that she's going to appear in other places, like AEW. And I will say this right now. I will say this right up front. If Sasha Banks is not the mystery partner for Saraya in the tag match against Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker, if she is not, then Tony Khan needs to announce it right away. Whoever it is, whether it's Naomi or Chelsea Green, nothing against any of those talents, but they are not going to have the same impact as a Sasha Banks would. Sasha Banks is the top female star that they can get. She's a huge name with crossover appeal. She was in The Mandalorian. She's got ties to Snoop Dogg, and she is a star with some level of crossover appeal and is a huge, huge name and face for women's wrestling. And if she's the tag partner, keep it a secret. If she's not the tag partner, you need to announce who it is beforehand, because if and no knock on them, but if Naomi comes out, or if Chelsea Green comes out, or anybody else that you can think of, Jordan Grace, all talented women. I'm not taking anything away from them, but people are going to be expecting Sasha Banks, and if Sasha Banks does not come out, it's going to go over like a wet fart in church, a nasty, smelly wet fart in church. So it's going to be like Christian's introduction into AEW times like 1,000. People are going to be expecting Sasha Banks. So if it's not her, you need to announce it before that show and before that tag match happens. I'm just warning you all right now. So Tony, if you're watching this, some free advice. If it's not Sasha Banks, then you need to announce who it is. Right away, like immediately. God, it could be Thunder Rosa. I was just thinking, what if this is Thunder Rosa's return? But which again, if it is Thunder Rosa, you need to announce it beforehand, because Thunder Rosa's no Sasha Banks in terms of star power. She's just not. Now, let's assume that AEW gets Sasha Banks, and Sasha Banks is all elite, or Mercedes Vernado, or whatever in-ring name she's going to go by. Let's assume that they got her and that she's the one that's going to appear in this tag match. I think that's a great get for AEW. I think she's, like I said, she's a huge name, great talent. Was one of the 4 horsewomen that helped spearhead the women's revolution in WWE and women's wrestling in general. Now, I would argue that TNA's knockout division was like the blueprint for what ultimately happened, but they were the ones in WWE. It was Sasha, Becky, Charlotte, Bayley. And Paige too. I would throw Paige and AJ Lee. I would throw them in there as well. They were the ones that kind of were the new blood that kind of spearheaded this whole big change for women's wrestling and expanding women's role in wrestling. And so Sasha is a pillar of women's wrestling. Now, here's the problem. Everything I just said, I wholeheartedly believe. She's a great talent, big star. However, I also see potential for another CM Punk situation here where there's going to be a honeymoon period and then something goes horribly wrong and then AEW winds up having egg on their face. Because that definitely happened with Punk, regardless of whose side you're on. Things with CM Punk went south, as tends to happen with him, given his history with TNA and his history with WWE and all these other things. The Punk thing was... It keeps happening with him, and that's all you can really say. It's like, look, I'm seeing a pattern here. I talked about patterns with the Elite, now I'm talking about a pattern with CM Punk. I'm seeing a pattern here with him, where it's like, he keeps getting upset over things, and blows things up, and burns bridges, and does all this other stuff. So, I see a little bit of potential for that with Sasha Banks, only because, keep in mind, she has walked out of WWE twice. She had that weird period where she was on hiatus for quite a while, and then came back, and they never really explained what happened or why she was gone or what the whole deal was. They even did that documentary talking about her return to the WWE, and they didn't elaborate on anything of why she walked out. It's been speculated that she was upset about creative or upset about her role in the company and things like that. And over this last summer, she walked out on WWE again, walking out as co-holder of the women's tag team titles. They had to vacate those belts. Naomi left with her. And it left them in a hole creatively that they had to kind of dig themselves out of. And now, apparently, the dispute was that she wanted Becky and Charlotte money. And they weren't willing to pay her that level of money. Now, personal opinion, I think Sasha is every bit the star that Becky Lynch is. I think she's a bigger star than Charlotte. I mean, we can talk about talent level all day long, but I think she's a bigger star, a bigger name and a bigger star than Charlotte. Charlotte's kind of the, like what Roman Reigns was a few years ago, where she was kind of like the favored child that got pushed regardless. And Becky and Sasha were the ones that got over naturally and got over organically with the audience. So it's kind of that thing going on with Charlotte, but I think Sasha's a bigger name than Charlotte Flair, personal opinion. But now, should she have gotten paid Becky and Charlotte money? Yeah, I would say so. I would say so, absolutely, for sure. But again, I don't know. I wasn't privy to those backstage conversations. I don't know what happened. I wasn't a fly on the wall. And the video I posted at the start, the little Looney Tunes clip at the start, that was more of a joke than anything else. Kind of something that popped into my head when I heard that Sasha might be showing up in AEW. Like, I was getting horrible flashbacks to CM Punk, and I was like, uh-oh, do they really want to do this? And again, like, they might bring Sasha in, and everything will be peaches and cream and gravy and everything all the way through her entire run. I don't know. I don't know. There's a possibility that the falling out with WWE was entirely on WWE's shoulders. That's entirely possible. I don't know. But that's the thing. I don't know. And I've seen a little bit of a pattern of behavior before, and it makes me a little worried, and it makes me feel like there's a little bit of a risk here with Sasha that could potentially bite AEW on the ass. And I think there are people in AEW, if they're being honest with themselves, they think it too. They would be aware of it as well. And you got to start thinking, is Sasha worth the risk to bring her in and risk the potential of her walking out on them at a big moment where they need her? Is that possible? And is it worth that risk? Is she a big enough name to kind of like, you know, because I don't think her brand has been sullied that much by the walkout. If anything, it only made her more interesting, the walkout from WWE. And now it kind of made her more desirable, because now it's like, all right, let's see what opportunities you can get outside of WWE. And those doors are all open to her now, and that's terrific. But again, I do have that little bit of a concern there that makes me wonder, like, how this is going to go if she does indeed come to AEW. Now, again, if she goes there and they got her and they bring her in through this tag match, I wish everybody involved all the best. I think Sasha's great talent, and if everything goes well, and if she comes in with the best attitude, there's no reason why she shouldn't be a great addition to the AEW roster. It's just, again, I have those nagging concerns in the back of my head because I remember how her WWE run went. So, again, that's something we'll have to wait and see. If she does indeed go to AEW, again, this is all just speculation on my part. I don't know shit. I'm just a fan who's watched this shit for way too long, and I don't know jack. So, I'm just kind of hoping for the best. It's hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And that's kind of where I am right now with Sasha, going to AEW and that being a possibility. So we shall see how all of that goes. Now, before I wrap up for the year, I think I should do a kind of a best of awards, end of the year awards or something like that. Talk about my favorite things to happen in pro wrestling throughout the year of 2022. Because there was a lot of stuff I enjoyed, even though I didn't watch a whole lot of professional wrestling. It was a very busy year for me. I got married. I mean, that was the thing that happened. So my year was kind of busy for, all the craziness going on in my life. But overall, it was a very productive year. But the wrestling I did get to watch, I enjoyed quite a bit. And there was plenty of stuff for me to enjoy and like. So I'm happy to talk about it in a best of scenario. Now, I should note, I didn't watch a whole lot of NWA. I did not watch a whole lot of New Japan, which has been rare, the last few years or so, because New Japan became part of my regular rotation and then fell out of it. Didn't watch a lot of Impact. I did watch Slammiversary, which I am going to talk about a little bit, but most of what I watched, it was AEW. And starting in August, around the time of the Triple H takeover, I started watching WWE again. I've been watching Raw and SmackDown fairly regularly, so there's all that going on. So I'm going to go over my Best of the Year awards. I've got 6 categories, and we will start with Tag Team of the Year, where I felt like there were a few options for this. I think the Usos had a really strong year, especially with the storyline with Sami Zayn and that whole thing going on, which I think has made the Bloodline the best stable in wrestling right now, and I really enjoy a lot of the stuff that they're doing. And Usos being solidified as the best tag team in the company and the longest reigning tag team champions in the company is great, and I think they've done a lot of positive things with the Usos this year. That makes them a strong candidate for Best of the Year. I think the Briscoes and what they've done, especially in their matches with FTR, have shown that even after all these years, they can still deliver nice, hard-hitting tag team matches and are still staples of Ring of Honor programming, which I'm assuming they're going to be for $10 a month moving forward. But there's also the Acclaimed, who I feel are one of AEW's big success stories this year. They naturally, and I'll say this, kind of like Britt Baker, I got on the Acclaimed fan train very early. I was like, I see something in these guys, especially the way they handle their entrances. I see something in these guys. And sure enough, they got over, and they overcame that whole debacle with the offensive rap that Max Caster did and that whole nonsense. They overcame that, got over organically, became huge fan favorites, and they got rewarded for it with a tag team championship run. I think the Acclaimed really is kind of embody what AEW was supposed to be all about, where it's like, we're going to give chances to the guys that you've never heard of, let them grow and develop, and see if they can get over enough to be worthy of a major push. And I think the Acclaimed have done that. I think the Acclaimed, they've turned into what I think they originally wanted Private Party to be. Private Party never grew, never developed into anything, even though they got a pretty big push early on. The Acclaimed, they've taken the ball and they've just run with it, and they've been great. They've been one of the best parts of AEW programming. They got Billy Gunn over. Billy Gunn's one of the most over things in the show right now, and it's like, that's just crazy to me. That's absolutely crazy. But so yeah, I think the Acclaimed are worthy of consideration, but my Tag Team of the Year is going to go to the team that I've enjoyed watching the most, and that is FTR. Cash Wheeler and Dax Harwood are fantastic, old-school, blood and guts wrestling, that old-school Arn and Tully style of tag match that I love so much. Their matches with the Briscoes were amazing. Most of the teams they work with, they make them look better. They've had, I can't think of too many cases where they've had bad matches. Generally, just they are just so much fun to watch and keep the art of tag team wrestling alive, and are a nice counterbalance to the more Young Bucks style of work where they just bounce all over the ring and do spots the whole time. They actually work a good tag match on a regular basis, and they are so, so good at it. So FTR is my pick for Tag Team of the Year. Female Star of the Year, I'm going to give that to Bianca Belair. Kind of by default. I mean, there are some old standbys like Becky Lynch is always reliable, and Asuka's always reliable, and Britt Baker's reliable, obviously, if you're going the AEW route. And there's other talents in there, like Bayley, for example. But I've talked about Mandy Rose. I put her over. She was one of the few shining stars in NXT. But when you look at, especially since WrestleMania, like, Bianca's been kind of the crown jewel of women's wrestling in the WWE, and I think she's handled that role for the most part very, very well, and I think she's done very well in that role. So I don't think too many people are going to fight me on her being the female star of the year. So I'm going with Bianca on that one. Male star of the year, again, quite a few options here. If you go the AEW route, I think Jon Moxley's one of the hardest working guys in wrestling right now. Gave up a vacation to come back to the company and fix their whole world title situation after the Punk debacle happened. He's worked hard to get guys over. He has worked hard in every match he's been in. He is just a workhorse in every sense of the word. And I know that not everybody likes Jon Moxley or his style, but you can't deny that the guy works his ass off to make AEW worthwhile. Every time he gets the mic, every time he goes out there and has a match, he works the absolute hardest out of anybody around these days. You've got Seth Rollins, who has dug himself out of the ditch that his face run left him in a few years ago and has turned into one of the better parts of the show. You've got Bobby Lashley, who I thoroughly enjoy because he's just a big guy that smashes people. Sami Zayn, who has one of the best storylines going right now. His whole role in the Bloodline kind of reminds me of Mick Foley being in the Corporation back in 1998, and I'm itching to see where that goes moving into the next year. Even though he got injured, I think Cody is deserving of recognition, getting the hero's return at WrestleMania and having those killer matches with Seth Rollins. MJF, from an AEW standpoint, I mean, he's got to be the AEW star of the year with that epic shoot promo, the feud with Wardlow, the big return at All Out, which should have been even bigger had the whole Punk thing not happened. And then ultimately winning the AEW championship that he rightfully deserves. And he's doing great in the role so far. Knocking out William Regal and successfully defending the title against Ricky Starks on this recent episode of Dynamite. So MJF is doing great. But I'm going to give Star of the Year, Male Star of the Year, to Roman Reigns. I think Roman Reigns has assumed the role and has become the talent that he always should have been. When they tried to turn him into John Cena 2.0 and the big babyface champion, it didn't work. It felt forced. It felt unnatural. And it was just a flop all around. And I've said before, it's like, look, it's not that Roman's an untalented guy. It's just that it's bad casting. They're putting him in a role that he's not meant to be in. And now they've transformed him into the character that he always should have been, the tribal chief, the unstoppable final boss with a stable working around him. And I think putting both belts on him has been beneficial for the championship, the main championship, and making him a sporadic appearance makes him more special, makes his matches more special. And I think he's one of the few guys around in the business today that has a big-time big match feel whenever he steps out there. It feels like a big deal whenever he's around. And not everybody can get to that level, that Brock Lesnar, Undertaker type of level. I'll even go even further back, like Sting in 97, Hollywood Hogan when Nitro was at its peak. That level where, oh my God, they're wrestling tonight. That's a big deal. Or that type of feel to them. And he truly is the world champion of WWE, something that they rarely ever have whenever they've been under this two world champion system that's never really worked for me. So I think Roman's done great, and I think he's my pick for 2022 Male Star of the Year, with MJF as a very close second. I want to make that clear. I did really like MJF this year, but Roman Reigns takes it for me. Brand of the Year. What wrestling show am I going to give Show of the Year? Well, I already said I didn't watch a lot of wrestling outside of WWE and AEW, and I gotta say it, I'm gonna say WWE, which I don't think I've said at any point on this channel the entire time, over a decade of making videos. I don't think I've ever given WWE Brand of the Year, but it's kind of by default because AEW has kind of fallen off a cliff creatively. and made their show kind of a mess, and I haven't watched much of anything else. WWE, even though I have issues and some pretty big issues with the show, it's been consistently entertaining, and the pay-per-views have gotten much better. Mainly because they stick to 3 hours. I'm like, oh my god, this is so much more palatable than these 4 or 5 hour marathons that they were doing once a month. The shorter shows have been much, much better. Even, I'll be honest, like Survivor Series, I didn't think was that good of a show. I thought it was okay. I wasn't sold on doing War Games every year, but at least the show was 3 hours, and it was like, at least it was like, it didn't feel like I was being held hostage the entire time, and the show was okay. It wasn't painful or anything like that. So, there's been a noticeable uptick in quality. And again, if Vince does come back, it makes me wonder, it's like, are we going to go back to having 9-hour pay-per-views once a month? Are we going to go back to that? Please don't do that. Please don't do that. I'm begging you. I plead with you. Then we've got special event of the year. They don't call them pay-per-views in WWE anymore, which just I still haven't gotten used to it, but we're just going to call it special event of the year. So what are my options? Well, I thought All Out was very good and unfortunately got hampered by the Punk debacle after the show, which is a shame because I thought the pay-per-view was great. I really enjoyed Slammiversary. It was the one Impact show I watched this year, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was a kind of a loving tribute to a product, to a company that's been around for 20 years now. And it was great. It was nice to see AJ do a pre-tape. It was nice to see Dixie Carter make an appearance. And it was a thoroughly entertaining show from top to bottom. Like, the main event of Eric Young versus Josh Alexander was basically referencing TNA's entire history in one match, and it was delightful for that reason. But I thought that pay-per-view was very entertaining, and it was a strong contender for one of the shows I enjoyed the most this year. But I'm going to give pay-per-view of the year to SummerSlam. It was the first WWE show I watched under the new Triple H regime, and I was so entertained from start to finish. It had the big stadium WrestleMania feel, but with none of the things that typically drag WrestleMania down. It was a well-paced show. It was an entertaining show, start to finish, and it concluded with one of the most insane main events that I have ever watched. Roman and Brock tore it down, quite literally, in one of the most exciting matches of the year. So SummerSlam is going to get my pick for show of the year. Now, that leads us to our final end-of-the-year award, the match of the year. Now, I mentioned on Twitter that I had 10 candidates for match of the year, and I'm going to go over them all here. I just mentioned it, Brock and Roman Reigns at SummerSlam, the infamous match with the forklift, and by far the best match that Brock and Roman have ever had, by a huge mile. That thing was absolutely insane, and I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It was amazing. We also have the two Cody-Seth matches, the WrestleMania match, which was great, and I thought was the best match at WrestleMania this year, mainly because of Cody's triumphant return. And the Hell in a Cell match, where Cody worked hurt, and was one of the gutsiest performances I have ever seen in any match ever. And Cody deserves 5 stars just for his performance alone, and I thought it was a killer match because of it. It made every move matter because everything looked like it hurt, because I know it did, given Cody's condition. Speaking of a series of matches, I already talked about the FTR Briscoes matches. All 3 of their Ring of Honor pay-per-view matches were amazing and made those pay-per-views worth it to some degree. They stole the show at every pay-per-view. They were excellent every pay-per-view. All 3 of their matches, all of them were great. I loved every single one of them. You got the hardcore battle with the double dog collar match. You got the straight-up wrestling matches earlier in the year. All of their matches were terrific, and just, if you love tag team wrestling, check out FTR and the Briscoes. Their matches were absolutely incredible. All 3 of them, great trilogy of matches, and that brings me up to 6. Also on my list, another candidate for match of the year is the Gunther-Sheamus match at Clash of the Castle, a match that was very well received, and with good reason, because it was just 2 guys knocking the dog crap out of each other. And I cannot believe I'm saying this, but Sheamus got a bit of a revival this year. A guy who I was never all that interested in, but they finally got him to a place where he's an acceptable part of the show and doesn't annoy the holy hell out of me. It's like, hey, just let him go out there and trade shots with Walter, and they'll just tear the house down. And they did, and it was great. This is the best match I've ever seen Sheamus have. And if you like a good old-fashioned slugfest, or a slobber knocker, as JR used to say, this one is definitely for you. Then we have a couple of AEW matches. First off, there's Swerve in Our Glory versus The Acclaimed from All Out, which was a tag team match that was amazing and caught a lot of us by surprise because The Acclaimed was so over that there were some people that were like, should Tony send them a message and tell them to just let The Acclaimed win the belts here? Which they ultimately did later. After the show, but the match was so exciting because the crowd was so invested in The Acclaimed, and it caught me by surprise because I didn't really care about Swerve and Keith Lee as a tag team, and I figured, oh, The Acclaimed's just going to lose to them, so who cares? But by the end of the match, I was like, come on, Acclaimed, you can win, and if you can get me, marking out like that for a match I initially didn't care all that much about, you did something right, and this was an amazing tag team match, one of the best of the year, easily. Then we have another one that I loved was the MJF CM Punk dog collar match. 2 dog collar matches made my top 10 list. That's crazy. But their dog collar match was a perfect end to the feud. And with CM Punk finally getting his revenge on the hated rival in MJF. And Wardlow finally betraying MJF. And I love this match mainly for that story point right there because I was a big fan of Wardlow. And I wanted him to turn on MJF, and they finally did it, and then that led into the MJF-Wardlow feud, which was very good. And then Wardlow's been kind of ice cold ever since then, but again, in front of the booking falling apart because Ring of Honor. But in any case, I loved the booking and everything they accomplished with this dog collar match. I thought it was great from a creative standpoint, and the match itself was a nice violent brawl, which is always good to see. And finally, number 10, this might surprise people, but I really enjoyed Honor No More versus the Impact Originals from Slammiversary. I thought that was a very fun match that, again, referenced TNA's history and was a nice little nostalgia match, but it was one that was very enjoyable and very entertaining, especially for longtime fans of like TNA and Impact, like I was. I was one of the ones watching TNA when they were on Spike TV back in the day, and I kind of miss it. I kind of miss those days, that show, and it was, TNA filled that post-ECW, WCW void in the 2000s that I guess AEW fills now, but I have some appreciation to TNA for some of those reasons, and to see a show that honored them so much and honored the history of that promotion for all the jokes that can be made about that promotion. I have a lot of positive things to say too, and it was nice to get this pay-per-view that kind of accentuated those positives. And I thought this 10-man tag was a lot of fun too, with a lot of great talents involved in putting on quite the show for everybody involved. So, of those 10, what is my match of the year? It's a very tough call, but I'm going to say, God, I'm still not sure. I'm looking at the list right now and trying to decide which one would be my favorite on that list. I think looking at that list for its uniqueness and the amazing visual that it provided, and the fact that it far surpassed anything that they had done previously, I think I'm going to give it to Brock and Roman at SummerSlam. That match, again, the use of a tractor with, to tear the ring apart was so cool and so crazy and so Attitude Era-ish that I can't help but love this. Also, gotta say it, I love Cowboy Brock. I like this reinvention of Brock Lesnar. I think is terrific, and I think it's like the most entertaining Brock has ever been, while also maintaining his tough guy, unbeatable appeal. I think Brock has made himself appealing in a whole different way. So, I think I'm gonna go Brock and Roman for my match of the year. Again, I didn't even decide it. I didn't even make my pick. I might even change my mind, who knows, but I didn't make my pick until this moment right here. Looking at these 10 matches, I was like, man, this is a really tough call, because I loved all of those matches, but I think I'm going to go Brock and Roman on this one. And I can also say, for me personally, it was the match that made me decide, okay, I'm going to keep watching. I'm going to go back to watching WWE. I'm going to go back and give this new creative direction a chance. And I'm kind of glad I did. Again, not everything they've done is great, but this is the match that won me back into watching Raw and SmackDown every week. And I think that, overcoming that, that apathy and disdain that I had for WWE programming, This match single-handedly overcame that and got me back to watching every week. So for that, I give this match a ton of credit, and I'm going to make that my match of the year. So, with all that said, I think I've rambled for long enough. I will leave you with a couple more things, more rambling. One thing, Royal Rumble is coming up, and I'm going to give my prediction on the men's Royal Rumble. Female Royal Rumble, I don't really know what they're going to do. I guess Rhea Ripley will probably win the women's Rumble. I don't know. I have a... It's a hard call there because I don't know what they're going to be doing heading into WrestleMania. But for the men's Rumble, I'm going to make this prediction. I'm not, saying something that a lot of other people aren't saying, but a lot of people are speculating that Cody's going to be back and he's going to win the Royal Rumble. I think that that's going to happen. I think Cody's going to win the Rumble, and this whole rumor of Roman Reigns wrestling both nights at WrestleMania, which I think would be amazing if they could pull that off. Do Cody and Roman on one night and do Roman versus The Rock on the second night. Roman versus Rock doesn't have to be for the title. And I think that's the intriguing thing. They might also split the titles up and just have Roman defend both belts on both nights, which I wouldn't be too big a fan of that. I would prefer it if Roman just kept both belts and defended them against Cody. But we might see Cody and Roman go for the big boy belt on night one, and then night two it's Roman versus Rock. I'm completely okay with that scenario. I think Roman's a big enough star to where a match with The Rock would feel like a big deal, and I think Cody is a perfect candidate to dethrone Roman. But then you also have to take into account, where is Sami Zayn going to fit into all of this? Because he might be the guy that pulls a Mankind and ultimately disrupts their, Roman's WrestleMania aspirations, almost like Mankind almost did for The Rock moving into WrestleMania 15. Now, they might just do a thing where Sami Zayn is the special guest referee in the match with Cody, and he gets hurt earlier in the show, and he comes back later and counts the winning pinfall. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how Sami Zayn fits into all of this, but that's my prediction for right now. It's going to be Cody versus Roman and Roman versus Rock split up over the two nights. So we will see how all of that goes. But now that I've talked enough wrestling, I just want to thank everybody for continuing to support this channel and for all the kind comments. I read all of the comments on all my videos. I appreciate all the support. Like I said, it has been a wild year for me. Getting married, completely changing my life, and it's only going to change more in 2023 as we look for a house and hopefully start having babies and all that other fun stuff. So things getting crazy, but I still enjoy putting videos out on YouTube. I walked away from it for a while, and I just, like a drug addict, I just couldn't stay away from it. I had to keep coming back. So thanks again, everybody, for all the support. This is going to be I'm filming another video that's will hopefully post on Christmas Day. We'll see. Hopefully I'm able to get the thing edited. But this is my farewell message for 2022. I will see you all in 2023. I hope you all have a great holiday season. Have a Merry Christmas and have a Happy New Year. I will be spending my New Year's in Las Vegas, so should be a ton of fun. But I will see you all next year, where I will be talking about Wrestle Kingdom, AEW, and Sasha Banks. We'll see how that situation unfolds, and I will be talking about the Royal Rumble as well. So there's a lot to look forward to next year. But for now, that is all I have for you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching, and I will see you all later.